Hello everybody, I am Mary Guinan Darmody of Tipperary Studies, and I'm out and about with historian Jimmy Duggan. Today we're doing Ecclesiastical Thurles, which is a side of Thurles that definitely Ecclesiastical Thurles is a big part of Thurles.
The story of the church in Ireland starts long before the foundation of Thurles. It's the time of the ring forts and early Celtic Ireland. And historians feel that there were two churches in this area, Codath and Cabrath. And Cabrath probably refers to a very old church that today is only a heap of stones on the ground behind Thurles Golf Club called Killestrian. But the second one is generally counted as Relic Vrida, and that name is still there. Gaelscoil Vrida, Relic Vrida, is still there today, and the road that comes to it, of course, is the Road of the Saints, Bourne and Ave. There's very little left of this monastery today except a small little triangle of graveyard, which in most monasteries, the monastery was generally laid out in trians or in fractions, and one of those fractions of the circular, always a circular monastery, the old Irish monasteries, would be dedicated to a graveyard. But all that's left is this little section here today, and that's mainly because the railway came through here in 1848.
Did it disturb the graveyard?
I would say yes, it came right through it, and the railway we see today is only a very narrow version of all the different rails coming into Thurles. The most interesting remains, I suppose, of the old monastery is the Cat with Two Tails, and this is the sign, or the imprimatur, if you like, of a very famous mason called the Gabon Sayer,
who would be associated with Derry na Flan?
Derry na Flan, where he is buried, and Holy Cross Abbey, where the story is that he carved a cat with two tails during the lunch break to prove how good he was. But this one is one of the very few extant today. Down from us, of course, is Friar Street, the old name of Gary Vauclahine Street, but today Friar Street because it's called after a Franciscan friary. And the Franciscan monk there is a Franciscan monk buried here, a brother Gavin. Nothing exists of the friary today except a very small window in the house, the Sheehan house there. This is Relic Vrida. It is a very ancient place.
And looking around the graveyard itself, Jimmy, the stones are small and old and nearly illegible. Do we know anybody that's buried here?
There are a few there. There's a very tragic one, a cook, child, died at 8 years of age.
And probably loads of people buried without headstones.
Oh yeah, very much. A lot of the stones that you see were just marked with a stone.
Yes.
Because their family knew where the stone was, so they knew they were buried. And of course, the same would apply very much to our next port of call, which is the old burial place of the town, St Mary's, Church of Ireland church. Now, much changed from the early Norman church that was built just outside again the walls of the town. This is a puzzling church in many ways. There you have the Grace Memorial with its very long inscription which begins, "Stop, passer-by, and behold not a funeral plaint but a wedding song, not a tomb but a bridal chamber." And a really interesting story there of the Grace tomb, again related to the Purcells, one of the big business people of the town, 1683. And there is a theory that was actually on the side aisle of the church, so that the aisle would have reached out to there, or that would have been moved out from a smaller chapel, as was common in Norman churches, a series of chapels along the aisles as well. And certainly Lady Thurles is buried here as well in the Lady Chapel, but we don't exactly know where that is either.
So you're saying the footprint of the present church is actually much smaller than
that's the
older,
theory anyway. Yeah, that is the theory, and but perhaps the most interesting tomb here is one of the very oldest, and it's the Archer tomb, as I've mentioned already. The Archer was one of the original burgesses and the extant of 1315, and
it's very intricate too.
It is, yes. It's I'm not too sure the O'Tunney's carved, but it's in that Cairns O'Tunney stone carving tradition of table tombs. So there would be an effigy of the Lord and his lady laid out, and with the different coat of mail and the greaves and the gauntlet and the swords and the helmet and so on, and then the lady would be dressed as well, a long pleated outside skirt, and then an inner one, a belted buckle, probably of gold, a very interesting headdress and so on, both with their feet lying on the dogs. And
the dogs and the clothes, a sign of their wealth.
The expert on this area, George Willoughby, he would maintain that the fact that they have their feet on the dogs means that they would have regarded Thurles as their home. The writing on the tomb is Hic Jacet Edmundus Archer. Here lies Edmund Archer, and he's styled as he's a burgess of Thurles, and he's Lord of Rathfarnagh, which is Archerstown, Galbula, further out the road,
yes.
Corbally, which is on the Dublin road, and Killinen, which is on the Neenah road. So he's Lord of a half circle at least around Thurles.
There's still intrigue and mystery to that, isn't there? Yeah. Everybody changed the history every now and again of it. I love it.
Yeah.
And they grab you, they're alive inside. You want to be careful of that, Mary. You know that. Try it there, Mary, see what happens.
A folk cure, if you like.
Okay.
So if you had warts, and most of us had warts, Mary, when we were young, most of us, our fingers were covered with warts. So you stick your hand in the hole. You have to say a prayer. Dip it in the water, and then you're cured for warts forever. Yeah.
I don't think today any children know anything about the word purgatory. Purgatory was a place where you had to suffer a while before you actually got into heaven.
Like the waiting room.
The waiting room, but it's a waiting room of fire and torture and everything else. And you needed all the help back both in heaven and on earth to get out of there by the prayers of the faithful, and of course the prayers of those in heaven. And who better to pray for you but the saints or the apostles particularly. Mm-hmm. So very often these weepers, as they were called, were carved out on the sides of the tomb.
So the 8 figures we're looking at?
Yes.
I think it's 8, yes?
Yeah. You'll see St. Peter there with the keys to the kingdom of heaven and so on. The central then ecclesiastical section of Thurles is vast in terms of the towns of Ireland, and it all stems from the original monastery that the Normans brought with them. So they left Relic Breda aside, or Killestrican aside, or Cheyenne, and built and brought the Carmelite order and built a huge monastery there on the site of the present cathedral.
Oh!
And this would have been in ruins then from 1550s on with the Reformation and so on. But like most of these monasteries, held a great land bank, and therefore the convents and the seminary.
And looking at our present day cathedral, that's not the original church.
No,
it was another.
The chapel lane, as you see in the map there, you had a small little laneway going up at the side of the presentation convent and into what was essentially a small little thatched house and that was the chapel, or the Matthew Chapel. The Matthews, they didn't impose the penal laws too strictly with regard to religion. They did with regard to property, but not religion. And so the people of Thurles could surreptitiously walk up Chapel Lane and into the church. As the Catholic resurgence came then, I suppose, it was decided to build the big chapel, which is exactly the same as the chapel in Drum today, but on a greater scale. And Bishop Leahy, coming from a Roman training, and therefore while most of these new churches in Ireland are Gothic, he went for the Roman or the Romanesque type of style.
Well, thank you, Jimmy, for a trip through the ecclesiastical history of Thurles.